Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Friday with the Jocks of All Trades podcast. We are overflowing with many different guests and talking people here. Words are hard. We have been slogging through the Raimi trilogy, and now we have arrived at the most controversial of all of them with Spider-Man 3. So, yeah, we've talked about 1 and 2. 1 and 2 are good. It's building to something, and now we've reached it with the back half of the trilogy here. Where do we start with this?
I'll start. 2 words: colossal failure. That's what I put down. My first notes. And this was before I watched it for the review time. I put down colossal failure because in my mind it was. And going through the entire movie, it was, because there's so many good trilogies out there, especially because 1 and 2 I think are very near elite. Like if you put 1 and 2 in the MCU, like right now, they'd be received critically so well. Fans would die over them. They would be salivating, wanting more. And the third one comes out, and you're like, what happened? Like when Batman came out, Batman Begins, Dark Knight. Dark Knight was amazing. And then we get to the third one, Dark Knight Rises. Definitely underwhelming, I would say, by most people's standards. But it gave a very good send-off to Batman and the whole kind of trilogy. This one did not give really a good send-off to anybody. I don't think. There was no, like, end point to this one. There was no, like, oh, that makes me feel good. Like, the ending did not make you even feel good. Like, it was just like, oh, okay. It was very abrupt. In my opinion, anyway. Obviously, you can disagree with what you want. But especially considering they wanted to make a fourth one and they couldn't do it, probably because this one really wasn't received that terribly well. I put it down as a colossal failure to start because it just really, really disappointing. So,
let me piggyback off that and push a little bit. I feel like the only reason it is viewed as a colossal failure is that Sam Raimi didn't have as much control over this film creatively. And I said this to Devin when she was like, oh, you guys are going to talk about Spider-Man 3. We watched it again. And I was like, there's just so much they're trying to do in such a short window. Sandman, obviously, spoilers, I guess. If you haven't seen this movie, it's a little old now. So
you should have said that at the first. There's spoilers. We're going to talk about the movies you haven't seen. If you're just seeing 3, you're behind the scene.
Right. But Sandman in itself, I told Devin this would have been more singularly interesting to just focus on the repercussions of Ben's death, because that kind of pushed Peter to become Spider-Man and to become this moral figure that has to put Spider-Man above himself a lot. And Ben's death shoots this whole trajectory over 3 films. It would have been more interesting to stick with 1, but then we tried the whole Venom thing. We tried the symbiote stuff. We tried
Harry.
Cringy Peter. We tried tying the loose knots and the Harry and Peter feud. Like
adding in Dr. Connors and Gwen
and Gwen's dad.
Yeah, needless side characters that didn't advance the story at all. Yeah. Although they were in the universe, but still not in this. You know, in the original, they didn't start with Mary Jane. They started with, in the comic books at least, Gwen Stacy. She was the original. Yeah. So they already started differently anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I had but one comment on Peter. We've talked about how Peter has acted in all 3 franchises, right? That he's gone from creepy to like just awkward to now he's just so cocky. In the first like 10 minutes, it's just I've been Spider-Man forever, and everything is just approached with I'm the man. Like,
yeah, and part of it I do understand, because when you have someone who I mean, as set up in the first one and the second one, when no one likes you for a majority of your life, and then all of a sudden everyone loves you. I mean, I can kind of see it going to his head a little bit, but not in the fashion that happened in this movie. The whole date scene in that fancy restaurant where he's like, I've kind of become an icon. I'm like, who talks that way? I don't care how big your head has gotten.
So to piggyback on that, also, that was his undoing through the whole film, was his ego.
He wasn't humble at all in this movie.
Yep.
It played a lot better when he was like down on his luck and people hated him. And this one, he was just so happy and cheery that it just kind of gave me bad vibes. I was just like, I don't like this Peter, like he was so happy that it was kind of like annoying. And then all of a sudden it just turned really quickly.
Cockiness.
Yes.
And the outright arrogance. And I do believe there is a difference.
There wasn't really an ounce of humility.
For example, it's like if you think of other superheroes that have like this happy-go-lucky vibe, like the Flash in some cases. He's happy. He doesn't come off as arrogant though. And we love him for it. So,
there are shadows of what Kyle, which you've experienced in 3, even in 2. I was rewatching some of those scenes too. When at the end of 2, just for context here, I'll talk about the shadows in a second. But for context, this is the successor, like the sequel to a successful movie. I mean, 2 was wonderful. It did better than 1 at the box office. And spoiler alert, 3 did better than both of them. But anyway, that's. Because it was that anticipation, right? It's like seen A New Hope and then an Empire, and then here comes the next one. Here comes Return of the Jedi. It's the anticipation, and even though clearly it wasn't as good a movie, the anticipation drove the box office and drove me to go see it. Quite honestly, there, and here I am sitting there going, "What is this?" I didn't understand it at the time when I saw it in the theater. Like, what is going on? Sam Raimi actually had a few comments about the character development of Peter through this, and he tried to impose this. There's very little of his original ideas that seeped through, but Raimi, being the good director that he is, the great director that he is, kind of salvaged some of the train wreck he got handed by Sony and Avi Arad at Marvel, some of those things. So the progression, at least according to Sam, was his awakening in the first movie, facing challenges and enduring. I think that was the word that I'd heard him use. And the last one is the dissolution, the character just reaching the end of himself. And that happens frequently in Spider-Man comics. You see heights, and he just falls, and it's usually very personal too. So this darkness that we saw in 3, it was a little cheesy. I think it was just cheesy, overdone. Some of the lines were like, oh gosh, are we really saying it that way?
Yes.
In that era, though, I have to say, we get to the darkness in the era. The darkness you see in 2 when he's just swinging off and go get him, Tiger, and he's just unaware of how it's affecting Mary Jane, right? Just totally unaware. So you see shadows of this ego emerge, like he's going to be not really considerate. You see that. Anyway, I'll get down to some of these other things later, but I'll just let y'all just jump in and chime away. That was the shadow of that. Anyway,
Raimi's quote that goes with that, and I saved it to talk about. And again, creepy. For those that don't know, at the bottom, this is my dad. So obviously, I have a feeling we're going to have some very similar.
The resemblance was completely lost on me.
Oh, sure.
The hairstyle was close.
Yeah. Raimi had even talked about why the Venom symbiote and that storyline was going to be helpful to develop Peter's character. And his exact quote is this: the most important thing Peter right now has to learn is that his whole concept of him as the Avenger or him as the hero, he wears this red and blue outfit. With each criminal he brings to justice, he's trying to pay down this debt of guilt he feels about the death of Uncle Ben. Mm-hmm. He considers himself a hero and a sinless person versus these villains that he nabs. We felt that would be a great thing for him to learn a little less black and white view of life, and that he's not above these people, and that these people are human. It's like, Like that just explains all 3 movies, because with Norman, a freak accident. With Dr. Octopus, another freak accident. And again, neither one of them were like malicious about what they were trying to do. Maybe Norman more than Ock, but that's neither here or there. With Sandman, he just wants to help his daughter. His daughter's dying. Like,
he says, Sandman says, not a bad person, just bad luck.
Yeah.
Sandman's quotes. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I love the progression in this movie.
I think it would have been very interesting. I mean, if Sam Raimi just wanted 3 to be just Sandman, I think that would have made a very different movie, because you would have been grappling. Because Peter would have had to have been grappling within the that someone consumed with revenge, without the complications of a symbiote enhancing his aggression. I think that just looking at straight Peter in that scenario would have been much more interesting and much more compelling than it's like, oh, we have a symbiote infect Peter, and now we have memes for the next 30 years. So,
well,
you're welcome.
Let's be honest.
They even wrote how to do the symbiote and then abandoned it. Do we remember in 2, John Jameson, the astronaut? In the comics, it comes on his spaceship to the Earth. Like, so they tried to rush so many things with the Venom storyline. The Venom storyline should have been Spider-Man 4.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with Venom being introduced.
No.
I just have a problem with how it was handled. Number 1, you introduce Venom just by falling onto the ground right next to MJ and Peter. That's a little weird. Number 2, Venom overtaking Peter. That's fine. I love that. Yeah. But then how Peter acts when he has the Venom on. That's just iconically horrible. We can all agree on that. Dancing and whatnot, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. Stupid. And then Venom going on to Eddie Brock, who was a horrible casting choice and just not a good actor, in my opinion, unless you're on whatever that show is.
I think
70s show.
That 70s show. With the character that he was given. And the character he was given was not great.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with Venom being introduced, but how he was introduced, what it did to Peter, and then attaching itself to Eddie Brock, and then the way Venom looked. Venom, as we know now, looks much better in the Venom movies than in that one. Just a very scrawny, little Venom.
Baby teeth.
Yeah, baby teeth. It was just weird. Sandman and Venom, I think, could have been a good a fine duo in this movie. Yep. It's just the way they handled Venom was horrible in every aspect.
Sam actually said this. It was another quote. It was on a podcast or a radio show. I can't remember which. And he was talking about Venom, and he says he can only bring to life characters that he loves and he understands. Yep. And he didn't either love or understand Venom at all. So all he got was just secondhand notes, it seems like, or his brother, who also helped to work on the film as well. So I'm not sure. It didn't seem as directly connected. Tried to weave it in, but
I think the main one of the main lessons to be learned in universe building here is one that Marvel had to learn here, and you can see that they did learn. I think the lesson from 3, which is do not rush characters and do not include characters just for the sake of including characters, because it does not work. And then look what they were able to create starting a year later going into now. They've done a slow burn on these characters and introduced them well. And you're seeing DC just a few years ago make the same mistake in Batman v Superman, Justice League, and all that jazz. It's you have Batman v Superman. It's okay, this is already bad. And then all of a sudden, Wonder Woman shows up out of nowhere, and you're like, So basically, do a slow burn on these characters. Take the time and do the work.
Well, the MCU just elevated the art form. What exactly what you're talking about? Introducing characters and then building the universe together as they're in the same universe. Going way back to the earliest movies that I remember that were actually decent, you would have to go back to Superman 78, and Superman 2. If you watch that trilogy. Again, 2 had a lot of hype, and 3 just kind of bit the dust. I don't know what happens after some success. There wasn't a long-term plan like at the MCU, to develop characters and eventually bring them together to combat this, juggernaut.
No, it's like a classic quote where it's like there's a hero that's come up with some success, and they're like, great, what's step 2? And they're like, honestly, I didn't plan on getting this far.
Yeah.
Just look at Superman. That was one of the worst things. The Superman 3, I think, with Richard Pryor, Superman 4, Quest for Peace. Don't get me started on that. The next one that really hit wasn't in the Marvel Universe even. There was a failed attempt, I think, in 1990 for Fantastic Four. But you can go Google that. Roger Corbin or something version.
Chris Evans in that?
No. He wasn't.
No. It was one.
Horrid. So the next successful one, I think, would be Batman with Michael Keaton, I think in 1989. And that was really good. I mean, Tim Burton and his darker outlook on it really, I think, coalesced that character, really made it wonderful. So those first 2 are really good. The third, and then the later versions, whenever Batman changed, the character and the actor changed every so often, they started to devolve as well. So you've got that's the most successful one. If you think 89, 90-ish, I forgot when Batman 2. So you're coming into they're doing pre-development on Spider-Man, right? Did it come out 2000? Is that right?
2001.
2001. So there's development toward there. At this point, everything is trying to be comic book accurate. Everything, right? It wasn't as gritty. I mean, it was a Hail Mary to try to get, the darker Batman, but it actually worked. And you know how they abandoned it, went more comic book and silly, right? When Arnold was in there as, Mr. Freeze and all those sorts of things. And eventually they came back to realism, which captured imagination. Oddly enough, I think it was Batman Begins came out in, I think, 2007. There was a return to realism. I think one of the failures of this movie, Spider-Man 3, is that they tried to retain more of the silly comic book, based humor.
They had said in the previous 2 movies.
Right. It was more realistic, more gritty. Here, they kind of took a step back and they missed their target audience. They in storyline, not only the studio. I mean, Raimi, I think I agree with you, Brad. I think he took what he was able to, he had, and made something decent of it. Wasn't phenomenal, but there's some good moments. But I think the vibe was changing in comic book hero movies to more realistic, and this one just took a step back for one of my reasons that it just scores lower.
And what's crazy, first of all, I wanted to piggyback again. I like doing this on the success of The Last Stand, which would have been 2006, which would have been the year prior to this. They should have seen, when you abandon these good plot lines to rush through the Phoenix arc in like a very shortened film. It was catastrophic. And you would have thought the studio would have looked and seen, X-Men was popular when it came out. They tried to do something different than the first 2, which, if you think about it, the first 2 X-Men movies, great.
They're pretty similar too. They're pretty basic, and that's what made them good.
Yeah.
Like they really just stuck to the core of these characters. Didn't play around a lot. They introduced a couple characters. On the next one, but this one really, and like you're saying, Brad, Last Stand, they were just like, well, we're gonna try to aim for as much money as possible. And did you get there? You did, but like you sacrificed, good character development, good writing. Like the writing in this movie, I can't tell you how many times I audibly just said, "Who wrote this movie?"
George Lucas.
George Lucas, yeah, probably.
Very stiff writing.
Yes, I had to laugh because you can tell, like, how they do early storyboards and it's not complete. It's like here's a moment, here's a moment, here's a moment. And we talked about that in 1 and 2 that there's a lot of moments that you can just go to. And the first two films that you just iconic and you know what's going to happen. This had it, but then as soon as it hits there, it diverges into the ridiculous. So let's talk about the first.
And there were a lot of moments in there that I'm sure the filmmakers didn't want to be there. That the audience were like, "Yeah, that's a moment."
True.
That is my guess, because if we remember the first time Harry is like goblinized, which by the way, like awesome idea concept of like snowboard, like kind of Harry. I'm like, oh, that's kind of 2000s-y. I like it.
I think it was a good development that Harry made. It's like, okay, my dad had the glider thing that was just this big, huge, bulky thing. What if I took it and made it rad? So,
yeah. But he picks up
appropriate
Peter.
Term. Very good.
Yes, he picks up Peter, takes Peter in the air, and we're like, whoa, here's another goblin and Peter fight. It
was amazing.
And then it just
the initiation.
Into,
when I was watching it. When I was watching it, it's like, Peter clotheslines him, he ding, and then falls, and it's just there. And I'm like, wait, you're going to end this action sequence on that?
Not even that. From the moment he picked him up to, we get Peter in Peter clothes trying to catch a ring during a fight. Like, get rid of the ring.
I kind of like that shot. I thought that was actually a pretty cool shot.
It is
when
a cool
the ring
shot.
was in the air, and he was. I wrote that down. I thought it was cool. One of my favorite lines from that fight was when Peter is trying to tell Harry that he's like, "Harry, I didn't kill your father." And then Harry's response is, "Shut up!" I'm like, "What?"
Let's do that. Let's jump to. We've kind of devolved on all kinds of the stuff that was wrong. What did you love about this film?
I love. Go ahead, Kyle.
I was just say I love when Toby became, or when Peter became, like the symbiote Spider-Man, and he was dancing around and stuff. I kind of wrote down Tobey Maguire. No, I hated it. Tobey Maguire equals Nicolas Cage when he has the symbiote on, because that's really what he reminded me of. It just reminded me of that. What I did love the Sandman transformation. Like what you said, like elements in this movie that worked. I really do think if this whole Sandman thing was just him, that would have been amazing. Like, and it was a really cool scene. Like even Spider-Man Far From Home, they got the visual effects people from this movie, or No Way Home, from this movie to come on to help them with Sandman, because it was well done and it was comic accurate. It looked cool. Like,
it took them 6 months to make that one scene where he is created and comes back together. So of course they did.
I bet. Like it was awesome. It was incredible when he was becoming Sandman, though. And then he lands in the sand, and they're like, "Oh, there's a change in mass." And the guy said, "Oh, it's probably just a bird." I'm like, "Aren't you guys scientists? Don't you know like simple math?
Yeah.
It's like a 200-pound man, not just a bird." I don't know. Yeah, I did love Sandman, the transformation, and that I thought that was really well done. So
I thought the visuals for Dark Suit Spider-Man was kind of cool when we first see it. But me personally, what I love the most about that scene is the orchestration, that theme, the da-da-da-da-dum-bum, and it's like that theme comes back so many times. And that was the part of the score of this movie that really, really stuck out to me, because I'm like, oh, I've heard this so many times, and now I know where it's coming from. So
yes.
I really liked that. I also really liked the one shot where Peter's coming to. Yes, thank you, Danny. Now here's the thing: did Danny Elfman do 3? Because what I saw in the credits was that
Giacchino,
themes
right?
were from Danny Elfman, and then somebody else came in and did the other part.
Wasn't it Giacchino, right?
I don't think so.
It might have been,
no.
but I don't know.
I'm not sure about that.
I
know though. Regardless of whatever happened, they kept some of those early themes from Danny Elfman, original Spider-Man 1 and 2, and elevated it in 3. Which is why I was like, well, we got this from Danny Elfman. Whoever had it, it's still Elfman's original.
Yeah, so Danny Elfman, then Christopher Young came in.
No,
okay,
that was it.
Yeah, so so thank you to both of those guys. The other part that I really loved was the one shot of Spider-Man when he's coming back to save MJ from Venom and Sandman. And it's the first time he's worn his red and blue suit in a while. And he comes across and to really accent the fact that it's red and blue Spider-Man who's back. They put him right in front of this big, huge American flag.
Yeah.
I loved that shot because it's just like, okay, they're accenting that red and blue Spider-Man is back. And I thought that was a fantastic shot.
There was one moment I felt like a lot of the scenes, especially near the conclusion, I felt like Raimi had where he wanted to position the characters. Skyscraper, he was still under construction. A lot of these things, I felt he had those closing, which were very, very good. The closing scenes. There was one scene with Sandman, and when Peter realized that he wasn't really that much better of a person, than the Sandman, of course, was, and he actually forgave him. Like, when do characters ever do that?
Yeah, that was a good line.
It's all about vengeance and to the death of my enemy. But when he saw he saw it personally in him, he was no different. Hardly. Yeah. It was some nice writing there too, to kind of parallel Peter's failings, which you see all throughout the comic books. Peter failing. I think it's one of the reasons that we love Spider-Man in general, is we can relate to him. Yeah. He's not so high and above from another planet, and I think
alien, that's what
not
movies,
connected. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what movies today can get so wrong. They movies today preach about creating these strong characters, and they think that by showing this character who is always successful at everything they do, and never really experiences any true failure, that we will look at that and be like, okay, this is a strong character. When audiences are like, no, we want to actually see strength in a character, having to overcome obstacles, having to overcome their own failures. Don't just tell us that they're strong, show us that they are. And I think movies are kind of getting that a little bit wrong today.
Yeah, I think that's what this movie's about. In looking at it, I've had to relook at it, look through a different lens, and I, in prepping for today, I was thinking, I've got a lot of issues and concerns, but I decided to put the other hat on, and what's good about it, what I appreciate about it. Why do I still own this movie after all these years?
I haven't burned the DVD.
Exactly. But no, it's the character redemption of some sorts, but not that he's perfect at all. But that at the conclusion of the movie, he's there apologizing in the same bar where he had the crazy dance scene and tried everything he did. The worst part of his id, right? Every part of that he just did wrong, and he finally tries to restore these things and actually, apologetically, realistically, not glossing over what he's done. But it's a really humbling character. And most superhero movies are just. The superhero is just above us and we can't understand, but that is and I think it's a great way to end it. It didn't have the bang that I wanted, I guess, as a movie. It was a more subtle character development, and it was cheesy and subtle, but I don't mind the cheese somewhat. I've read a lot of the comic books from back in the day. They were very cheesy. I included the introduction in Spider-Man 252 of the symbiote, which we didn't know in the black costume. Well, that rocked the comic book world. I actually went out and So I bought that 252, and it was supposed to be worth billions, but it didn't turn out to be worth more than just a few $100s even now. But this character emerges, this new costume in the Secret Wars series, if you're familiar with that, way back in the day in comic books. So it was so innocuous, and it is a parallel to the darker side, the innocuous things attaching and changing us, and we're not even real. We thought it was something great. Peter can just summon his suit, the black suit, take it off, whatever he needs to do. It automatically had webbing and everything, which was so beneficial, but then it turned out to be the worst thing ever for him.
Yeah.
I did think.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to mention what I liked real quick, but go ahead.
So, just off the Venom thing, I thought that was a really cool shot when he was taking off Venom in the tower. And I thought that was really cool, really well done. Obviously disappointed who it attached itself to, but I think that was a really cool shot. So
let me add to that. I would have rather seen J.K. Simmons with the Venom symbiote
for sure
than Topher Grace. The face opens up. Parker!
Parker! Just Venom Parker. I'd be like, this is a terrifying but also hilarious thing. I wouldn't know whether or not to scream or laugh.
Right. So I'm gonna rate this one differently, and we'll talk about it in a few minutes and get to our ratings after sharing some short trivia. I'm sure we all have some trivia. But I loved, and this is what's crazy, and this is why I almost like this one more, because I liked the stupid and I liked the awesome parts of it. Like, it's just not like, it's still dumb, like overall looking at it as like a movie person, like, ugh, like, but you can't help but not like it. So let me go through a couple of these things. I had to laugh at, how do we miss the comet that lands 10 yards away from us while we're on the web? Like, if there was a comet that landed near me, I'd be running.
Oh, he was kissing her. He was kissing her.
Still, like, you would hear that. Like,
hey, must have been.
Anyways,
oh my god,
it was better than the upside down kiss. I guess I don't know.
I had to laugh that Sandman's daughter, his name is Penny, and he needs to steal money to keep Penny. I was like, Penny, nickel, dime. What are you going to name her? Like, can you not come up with something more creative? Like, just the little things. I'm like,
he named
May.
her Penny.
Can we talk about May for a second? May has always been the thing that drives Peter to be better. May
I think it was the beret she was wearing. It threw me off totally. She's not French.
But she even, and I had to write it, she even talks about forgiveness and understanding somebody else early. And the foreshadowing is fantastic. I skipped through because I wrote like too many notes as usual. Eddie Brock, like they took the Ultimate Comics version of Eddie Brock, the original comics version of Eddie Brock, and like a different version of Eddie Brock, and like threw him into a combination of what they wanted Eddie Brock to be here. And if they wanted him to be redeemable in any way, they failed at that spectacularly. So I like having a sleazeball that I just can't like.
I didn't like him for the first moment he got on the screen. I didn't like him.
No,
he's trying to take Peter's girl, trying to take his job. It's like, I mean, he's snapping pictures. If I were Spider-Man, I was hoping this would happen. Web the camera and smash it. I was like, yes, but no.
Yeah, I actually loved when he, like, even though he was kind of a jerk, when he got the symbiote on, I loved when he was a jerk and trashed the camera, threw him against the wall. I was like, okay, I can get down with this. Yeah,
we won't forget. Just get religion. I was like, oh, Peter.
And then I think it's really funny that he ends up in a church later, and that's how he gets.
Peter.
Yeah, no, and that's how that's how
to cleanse his soul. Oh, right. There's one funny moment. You're talking about funny moments. There's a absolutely hilarious moment. I laughed out loud when this happened. When J. Jonah in the newsroom, right?
Yes.
They're trying to come up with a new slogan for the Daily Bugle.
I wrote it.
It's wow. It's now. And I laughed out loud because remember Betty, his assistant, was trying to help him yell the medicine. Like, you take medicine.
Not that one. Not those pills. Not those pills.
There's comedic moments in here, just gags like that. Made me laugh. So yeah, those were good moments.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it.
And he spills them. Take it with water.
I have to agree with Kyle. The origins of Sandman and Venom, like they're like the moments that you see them are created. Getting the itty bitty like big rocks and then realizing it's sand and coming out and seeing him like create a hand for the first time and like the imagery is beautiful. Like Sandman would have been fine by himself, but I love the ripping off the symbiote and throwing it down and it just like reaching out for Eddie. And I didn't know if you noticed this, but I slowed it down because I wanted to see, because I know Raimi loves horror elements and Sandman's creation was horror. So was Venom's was very horror. If you go back and look, the strands that are coming down looks like little hands reaching for Eddie. It's like feeding off the negative energy and anger and like just grabbing him and taking him. I'm like,
it's not just external too. If you notice, the symbiote goes inside his mouth as well. It was pretty horrific. I thought.
Yeah, I was like,
So not just external, it went inside him. Ugh.
And the creepier thing also with that is Peter resisted the symbiote. As soon as the symbiote touched Eddie, we are Venom. Oh, right. Okay. He has no impulse control. Got it. Yikes. See a chump made me laugh. I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye.
Okay, who talks like that?
I don't know.
Okay, Lucas had a hand in this. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Near the end, Brad, when Harry comes in to save the day, these two little kids are like, "Awesome, wicked, cool."
Yeah,
like, no one says that about.
Yeah, I was like, "Are we in England?" Wicked,
you're right.
Cool.
Wicked, cool. Like,
well, I loved that the news reporter
was British.
Yes, was absolutely British. It's like no one will know. I say it looks like we might be seeing the end for Spider-Man. It's like
the brutality of it.
Where are you from? South London?
Right. Three more comments and I'm done, and then let's go score it and wrap it up. Wait, trivia, and then we'll score it. Sorry. So giant Sandman. Why every time they had Sandman could they not go beyond? Oh, like he's still a human. He can talk. He can create vocal cords with sand. Although that might just sound like sandpaper.
Exactly.
I think his voice might have been a bit gravelly.
I don't know.
That's about as good as some of the lines there, Luke. I must have.
I loved Gobby and Spidey versus Venom and Sandy. I loved that. I was like, cool, let's do it. Harry's whole redemption arc to the fact that he'll forgive his friend all the way up to death. I was like, wow, like that's an incredible turnaround of he's right. He's still Peter. I protected you in high school. I've always been your friend, and I will lay down my life for you because I know what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and foreshadowing, Brad, when he's in the hospital, he said I'd give my life for them. I was like, oh, that's good foreshadowing because
exactly. Exactly.
My last comment, I agree. Sandman, the apology, the even hearing like that's not how it was supposed to happen. Like I wasn't gonna hurt him. It just happened to happen. And that's the more heartbreaking thing is that it's not, I wanted to gun him down and get out. No, he just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Again, just bad luck, bad timing. I also love that this is the first villain that left on good terms with Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Didn't kill him, didn't die. I mean, Venom and Eddie, that creeps me out too. If you guys went back, I watched that in slow-mo.
The skeleton
reaches out and grabs him when he jumps in to like save the symbiote from the bomb. Symbiote's like, yeah, you're coming with me, bud. I'm like, ooh, creepy. But that forgiveness sequence, and then he just blows away. No, I'll see you tomorrow, or he's just gone. Who knows?
My question was when he was floating away. I'm just going. So wait, he doesn't have to do any jail time or anything. He just gets to float away.
What jail would you put him in?
I mean, it's true. Yeah,
a vacuum. I'm pretty sure Spider-Man did that to him in the comics. He put him in a vacuum.
Raft. Well, yeah, that's true. All right.
It also kind of puts holes in Spider-Man No Way Home because the premise was all these characters were supposed to like die.
Spoilers. That one is spoilers. That one's too soon.
That one is spoilers? Okay.
Spoilers. Too soon. Does anybody have trivia? I have a few things to share. Anybody have like some cool tidbits that we haven't talked about?
How long does it take Spider-Man to show up in this movie?
Like Peter or Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Ooh, I don't know. A long time.
32 minutes.
Oh.
Like
that's about as bad as the original Hulk movie.
Yeah,
right? He didn't show up till later, and that's one reason it bombed is you had so much character development, and Ang Lee, I think it's right, the director, he was so great in visuals, but if Hulk didn't show up until it was about the same amount of time, like at this point, why are we here? I need to see some web slinging or whatever. Like, no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, no, it's true. Oh, did you catch the DC reference in the movie?
No.
Shazam?
Yes.
Oh, Shazam. Yeah, you're right.
Go, Kyle.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's my one little tidbit. When he said Shazam, I was just like, oh, yep, there's another DC reference.
Here's kind of a terrible bit of trivia, but it is one either way. Thomas Hayden Church, when they were doing the stuff before the film came out, talking to stuff, he was on the Jay Leno show, and he revealed that he broke 3 knuckles during that subway scene. Here's why. Where he swings at Spider-Man and he misses and he hits that brick wall and parts come off. The way that they did it, they put a foam brick in there, but Raimi and Church didn't know that they hadn't put the foam brick in yet and replaced the real one. So when he yelled action, Church swung and went whack and just broke through. I was like, like that's just painful. So
workers' comp for you.
Yeah, a misstep. But I was like, you like, what do you do? Ouch.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I will say one other thing. There will be the one meme of Peter looking at MJ when she's performing on stage, and then Harry watching from the
with the binoculars.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, no, I had just seen the meme earlier today.
Good.
And I laughed so hard when I saw it in the movie because I'm like, oh, that makes so much more sense even now. So, yeah.
I've got one music thing since I'm a musician. One musical thing. The opening song by MJ is It's Wonderful. I think it maybe is it Urban Berlin? Did I get that right? I can't recall. And so they say it's not actually a positive song. It is a foreshadowing of the disappointment in love. Go back and listen to that one.
Ooh.
There's my contribution.
Ouch.
Dang.
Yeah, it's not a positive song. And he's just like, it's wonderful. He's just, mimicking along like an idiot. But this song is all about the failing of love.
Yeah.
So even at that point, we get a shadowing of he's oblivious to what's going on in his relationship and around him.
James Franco took cooking lessons just to learn how to make the perfect omelet for one scene. Why?
Wow.
Oh, Topher Grace gained 24 pounds of muscle.
Yes,
I can't see it anywhere on screen, y'all, but he gained 24 pounds of muscle and left the 70s show to do this. So
yes,
he must have been, I don't know.
Must have gone all to his feet or something.
Pinstripe. I don't know.
Why we don't like him? He based his performance on alcoholics and drug addicts.
I did read that.
That makes sense now. Why we all are just like, you're sleazy. I don't like you.
No.
And let's see. I have one more. We've kind of talked about it a little bit. Raimi just opposed having Venom so often, saying it was the lack of humanity, because if you look at everything else that he has had his hand in, we can relate with it. But he eventually came to appreciate the character, and he liked Topher Grace's performance. Yikes. They claimed that he hated the character. Like after he had liked it, they kept that as the PR to hide that Venom would be in the film, and listed Topher Grace as just like, I guess like a cameo. Like, I don't know. They tried to hide it really well. But so the truth is he does hate it, but not that much. I don't know. But
I've got one more fact for you. One more fact. The worldwide box office, this is not adjusted for inflation from 2007, but the top 3 worldwide box office takes for Spider-Man movies are number 1, No Way Home, number 2, Far From Home, and number 3, the third spot, is Spider-Man 3 at $894 million worldwide. Ooh. So it not adjust for inflation, you might actually have it getting a little bit closer to Far From Home. I'm just saying.
Wow.
I'm just saying. So the top 3, it's the top 3 worldwide, not domestic, but worldwide. It's the third highest spot. The movie we're talking about tonight. So
you look at Iron Man 3 too. Like Iron Man 1 obviously started off the MCU really good. Iron Man 2 okay. Iron Man 3, I think, was the highest grossing Iron Man there was. And in my opinion, I think it made over $1 billion. In my opinion, I think it was probably like the worst one. So, you know, like you said at the beginning, the anticipation of all of it, like it was just not great, but it's the third one. So people were excited to see it.
Yeah. I still have not.
I was excited. I remember going to see the movie. I was excited.
Yeah. Last trivia piece.
Yeah.
And then we'll go on to scoring. So we talked about it beforehand. Thank you, Dad, for the additions. Kyle for helping us out with this one too. And Luke, I think you threw in another one. Raimi's third movie was a big question mark rolling around to the third. Here is the list of villains that were all talked about to be in 3 at one point.
True.
So the 3 that we got, Sandman, Venom, and New Green Goblin. That's fine. Carnage was talked about, which we have now gotten a film for. Lizard was talked about, which we have now gotten a film for with Reese.
Ivan.
Thank you. Vulture, which we've gotten now with Michael Keaton, but it was supposed to be Ben Kingsley, which is weird because he's the Mandarin in the MCU. If you don't know what the Mandarin is, go back and watch it. The Mandarin. And then Electro was supposed to be in it. We've got that from Jamie Foxx now. Toxin, which is another symbiote, was supposed to be in it. I don't think we've seen Toxin. I think it was Riot in the Venom movie, right?
We saw Toxin at the end of Venom 2 in the cop's eyes.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you. We have seen Toxin. Mysterio, which we eventually got later. It was supposed to be Bruce Campbell. We got Jake Gyllenhaal. Oh, well, I mean, I still liked it anyways. And then Stiltman. Oof. If you're not familiar with that, look up the pictures of it. It wasn't good. So glad it didn't make it.
This is why DC has the better villains. They have the Joker. We have Stiltman.
Well, okay. This is a Marvel podcast, sir. Wearing Superman to a Spider-Man podcast. Okay.
Hey, it is an S.
He's way outside these boxes, y'all. He's way outside.
Yes. Let's go ahead and give our ratings for these films. Kyle, you're up first. Where would you put this film?
I believe I said 4.8.
That is
correct. Was my rating. Definitely, I thought about putting it below 4, but like, it does have a few redeeming qualities in it for sure, and you can definitely see ideas in there for a fully cohesive movie. But I said this before we started, like it felt like a DC movie to me with all these villains and you know, in those movies too, those DC movies, like there are elements of it where you're like, this could have been a really good movie if they took a lot of this crap out. Yep. So if they fixed a few things, I think it could have been a really good Spider-Man movie. But with 4.8.
So that would give it the Mockingjay pen for our ratings. Which is, it was okay, but I wouldn't own it. Same with the Mockingjay pen. That's why it landed there. Anyhow, let's go whatever this order is. I think it's clockwise. Luke, so that would make you next. What did you rate this film?
I would have rated it like a solid 5, but because I watched the Amazing Spider-Man movies before this one, I looked at horror with what they did to my girl, Gwen Stacy, and I'd have to dock it points for that. So I have to give it a 4.5.
That's fair, which is also the Mockingjay pen once again. Dad, what is your rating for this film?
I give it a solid 6. Having read the comics up to this point, and I'm taking it up to this point, it hasn't varied too much over the years. I still hold it in some high esteem. Raimi, the acting, and the redeeming of the story, and the introduction of characters that I read about in comics. So it still has so many. I found myself laughing, groaning. As a matter of fact, one other side note: if you groaned, that's actually part of the reason. You should be groaning at Peter's, stupid, silly reaction sometimes to the way the symbiote is reacting. So I did groan a lot, more than I probably should, but I found myself cheering too. The ruby slippers. Woo!
Yes, which is
we're not in Kansas anymore,
and I'd watch it again. So
yes, I do. I will watch it.
That's
again.
A good one. Now I'm gonna demolish everyone's score with the highest score of the evening, with a 6.1. So
yes,
it's like Olympic trials here.
Demolish.
I think this is a massive departure from my 8.6 for Spider-Man 2. I love Spider-Man 2. I love Doc Ock and the comics and the TV shows. He is just that lovable villain. If it had just been Sandman, this would have been the highest on my list, but they just did too much. We've already talked about it. But I still love it. Like, I'd still put it on and still watch it, but I have to. It's not a standalone. I have to watch it with all of the rest of the movies in the trilogy for me to be like, oh, I appreciate what's happening. So in that case, I did. I also had to give it the Ruby Slippers. Look, I'd have it on my shelf and I'd watch it again. And I did. I went out of my way post No Way Home and purchased all the films so that I could go back and watch them again. So, so I mean, it's not a bad film, but again, I think as a standalone, it really struggled, and it showed. Any final comments before I close this out? Anything else that anybody needs to know about this film? Your thoughts about the film?
For me, just one little quick note. It didn't feel like the other two Spider-Man movies, even right off the bat. It was just a very different feel to it. I didn't feel like I was in that Spider-Man world. So I feel like when that happens in a movie, if you're taken out of that world, you kind of start off bad. You don't really recover from it. So I really do think a few shots, a few minutes of Spidey early on really could have helped that movie. But didn't. So.
Ouch.
Yeah, I would agree.
Well, thank you all for joining us for another edition of Smashed Popcorn. You can catch us next Friday, where we will be joined by another guest, actually the person that voted and got other people to vote the most for our movie that won our poll, National Treasure. So he kind of begged to join us, and he'll be here. But again, thank you for your patronage. Subscribe, like, share. Again, we're going to put out another movie poll, a couple more. Vote. Tell us what you want to hear us, I guess, tell you. So thank you so much, and thanks for hanging with us. Goodbye, everybody.